Here we go. This is Andrea Rokira, and this presentation will focus on AJAX, JSON, and API Web Services. So I will start by providing some basic definitions of JSON and AJAX. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, and it's basically JavaScript code that can represent objects or arrays. This is a very popular notation language, and it's largely implemented because it's really easy to read, easy to parse, and it can represent virtually any kind of object. AJAX stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Asynchronous means that things happen in the background and don't require, for example, a page refresh. So with AJAX, we can display dynamic content in a web page. XML is a format very similar to JSON, and it was the industry standard data format for a long time before JSON took over. Okay, next I'm going to describe briefly what is an API. API stands for Application Programming Interface. It's a set of rules that specify how software components should interact. So AJAX works in tandem with the web API we are going to use to retrieve data. So a web API works very much like a web server. So we have a client that sends a request and the server returns data back, typically in JSON format. So there are many API web service providers out there, and even there are web directories that we can use to find the right API or the right provider. So it's common that these providers are required to use an API key to access their data. And basically the key has an authentication purpose and has to be included in the string of connection. Any browser supports a tool known as XML HTTP request, used to establish a connection with a specified URL and start exchanging data. So although this built-in tool includes XML in its name, because it was originally designed to work with XML data format, it can be used to work even with other data format like JSON. So in this slide I'm highlighting the most relevant lines of code, but I'll show you the entire code in a minute. So the first step is to actually call this tool into play by creating a variable that holds an instance of XML HTTP request. So then we use the function open to actually establish the connection to the server. And this function uses two parameters. The first one is the connection method, which in our case is get, because we are reading data, we are retrieving data from the server. The second one is a string that includes the address to the data store of the API web service provider and other important pieces of data. So the gray part is the base URL, which never changes, to which we concatenate our query. So once we reach the data store, we actually ask a question, and this question mark actually starts our query. So we basically are saying, okay, connect to the data store and ask for a location that has this postal code, and so this ampersand is used to concatenate like a filter um, uh, is found in this country, and eventually use this API key to authenticate me. So after that, we need to tell the browser how to correctly parse the data returned from the server. So we are going to use another tool called JSON with a function that will parse or interpret the response from the server. It is recommended to actually use the console before any attempt to display or information in the HTML document, just to be sure that we are retrieving correctly the data. And eventually we're going to use the send function to actually get this data from the server. Otherwise we won't see anything in the console or in the HTML document. So I would like to show you what that string does. So as you can see, the string I included here in the slide returns this object. So JSON is quite simple to read. So every time we see a curly bracket, it means we are dealing with an object. Every time we see a square bracket, we are dealing with an array. So the server returned an object made of two attributes, data and count. Data contains an array as a value until here, while count contains just one. So basically, in our JavaScript code, we will tell the browser to traverse this JSON string, so to traverse the object attributes and traverse the array values so that we can retrieve exactly the information we want to display. So let's take a look to the code. So this is my HTML document. I'm using a form with radio buttons, each one corresponding to a different city, and then by pressing the check weather button, I'm contacting the server and asking information about the city I selected. So let's see what happens in the background with the JavaScript code. So I'm first creating a variable to hold the button element of the HTML document. Then I'm adding an event listener to that button. So I'm saying on click run this anonymous function, and then as the first step, retrieve the value of the selected radio button, and then let's create an instance of the XML HTTP request, and then we establish the connection. So we use the open function, the get method, the string, which is actually made by concatenation. So according to the city I selected, I have this value concatenated in between, and then I have a callback function on load, within which actually it happens the most important part of the operation. So we're parsing the JSON data, the response from the server, we are printing to the console, and then we're calling another function to actually display specific pieces of data from that JSON string. As you can see here, I'm traversing the JSON objects and arrays attributes and values, and then I'm displaying those values in my HTML using the inner HTML function. So let's see how this works. Let's open the console just to be sure that everything is okay. And here, let's start from Los Angeles and check weather. So, as you can see, I received back from the server the JSON string, and I'm filtering, through the JavaScript code. I'm filtering this JSON string, and I'm using the city name, the temperature here in Celsius degrees, and also a brief description of the weather in Los Angeles. Same thing if I ask for weather in Philadelphia. So I receive another JSON string related to Philadelphia, and same thing with New York. So it's quite straightforward. Yep, I hope. Yeah, I hope every aspect I described is clear. Let me know if you have questions, and if you don't now, you can even contact me later on our Slack channel. Thanks, everyone.